is when I was doing the border, I was very fortunate, and I don't have pictures with me tonight, but I do have pictures, that I was able to find the same dinosaur print on an 8-inch repeat, and I managed to match in the corner on a diagonal, which is like, wow, did I ever get lucky or what? All but one corner. And I thought, well, how can I do that? So I decided to just be totally different and put the made by information on the front. So I went to our handy dandy sewing machine, embroidery machine, after I dipped my toe very deeply into some Inkscape and ink stitch. And it's not that bad once I got going. So this was the first cut of it. It turned out that I'd made no changes whatsoever to my graphics. And on the tree, and this is supposed to be a volcano, and it's not all the way done because there was too much going back and forth in the same spot. Yeah, I see, yeah, somebody else knows my pain. A meteor coming after it, the ferns, well, okay. But I decided not to do those after all. And so the next installment is the finished product on the quilt. But I just wanted to share what has come off the embroidery machine so it can do more than just hats and names on shirts. That's all I have. Any questions? Yes?
So the free dinosaur part that you got only made you spend how much more on everything else on the quilt?
Yeah. Okay. It's all about the learning as you go. It's the learning process, right? You stumble, you fall, and you pick yourself up and try a different way, all right? So, okay. Oh, yes.
Can we have a workshop for the new people?
Yes, I will get an embroidery off class on the calendar sometime in August. All right? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Next we have Ryan, who's doing embroidery old school. Not the fancy way, but it's still fancy.
Thank you. Oh man. Hello everyone. My name's Ryan. I'm relatively new, first time up here. Got voluntold up here, and I don't know how to use the embroidery machine yet, so I've been learning cross stitch, and this is the heart I made today. The back's actually pretty clean up until this part, which was done here in 4 minutes to get this silhouette done. That's basically it. Still learning. Haven't poked myself yet, but that's it. Yeah. Any questions for my outline?
Where'd you get the pattern?
I drew it.
Nice.
It's actually wrong on there. Thea gave me some instructions to stretch it out and make it work, but yeah, that's it. Thank you.
I love starter projects. Next up is Walter, who has Not Plastic.
Let's see. I wasn't planning on use this thing. I wasn't planning on presenting tonight, otherwise I would have brought the things that I made as part of this. A little bit of background so that things make just a smidgen more sense. I am a adolescent Montessori educator, and I was away for the summer doing part of my training. As part of that, I had to take my adult hat off, put my adolescent hat on, and I had to engage in a plan of work and study, which is Montessori jargon for how we deal with a lot of different things. But I was interested in taking the sheep that we had and exploring how oil could be extracted from wool. That was discussed, and I was like, oh, that seems like a neat thing. and I really wanted to learn about this mysterious substance lanolin, what it is, where do I get it, how do I get it, and I didn't look up any pictures of it, because looking at this picture now, you're going to see what I'm doing, and you're like, why is he trying to do that? That's not going to work. But I'm getting ahead of myself. There was a lathe at the farm we were working at, and I haven't played too much with the lathe here, mainly because I'm not authorized, but I didn't need to be authorized for this lathe. And so I took full advantage of that, and I sure learned how to use a lathe. And my initial thought was, okay, Lord, I need to zoom in because you can't see anything there, can you? There we go. My initial thought is, olive oil comes from squeezing olives. Surely sheep oil must come from squeezing sheep wool. Well, how am I going to squeeze sheep wool? So I had this elaborate idea where I'm going to have essentially a piston that I shove inside of the vise, and I squeeze on it real hard, and then the oil comes out. Bing, bang, boom. I took some measurements. I had an idea of how big it needed to be. I didn't know too much about, well, how do I stop the oil from seeping into the wood? I'd figured it out as I went. I didn't know about what kind of pressures I could be putting on this wood as I'm clamping it into the vise, because I didn't want it to smatter and explode. I didn't worry about that, and I didn't need to at the end. So going through my process, we had all kinds of scrap wood. There was a table leg, and then lots of these blocks that would belong in a preschool classroom, and oh man, they were so much fun to turn on the lathe. And so I ended up with my two little cylinders, but I was banging my head against the table because I really wanted to get a hole in my bigger one so my smaller cylinder could fit inside my bigger one, but we didn't have the chuck that we needed to do on the lathe there. And then I turned around and realized the tool to do that was the drill press that was right behind me, so rather than trying to do the right job with the wrong tool, I used the right job for the tool. Tool for the job, rather. And I came up with this sort of mortar and pestle setup. And so I took my raw sheep wool and I shoved it in, and it didn't work. For a couple of reasons. If you can't see this too well, but in my design specifications, I knew that the jaws of the vise extend a maximum of 11.7 centimeters. With nothing loaded into that, it was 17 centimeters. So that wasn't going to work. So rather than admit defeat, I decided I needed more vices in my life and more excuses to use the lathe, and so I made a bigger wooden clamp to clamp down on my essentially wooden mortar and pestle at this point, which was really just an excuse for me to play more with the lathe, because the more I was using the lathe, the less I had to be doing my actual coursework. And so I ended up coming up with this, clamping it down, and I say I have success here. I didn't actually have success, because what happened was I cheated because I had two processes going on at the same time to get this lanolin, and at this point I should probably tell you what lanolin is, rather than just showing you that picture. So lanolin is a purified wool grease, not an oil. Grease is that emulsified oil that's a semi-solid at room temperature, not the lovely liquid that we're used to thinking, but the fact that it was introduced to me as this liquid, I just had this preconception in my head. I said, oh, I know how to get a liquid out of things. Pressure will work. Oh, pressure doesn't work so well for getting grease out of things. And so, boring stuff about lanolin that was important for the presentation I was giving before. The things to take away from this is I can heat it up without it boiling away. It'll float on water, and it's supposed to be white or yellow. We're going to talk about why my lanolin is black. But it floats. It won't boil away if I try and boil it. And so I noticed that after I put this disgusting water from scouring the wool out, stuff started growing in it, or at least it looked like things were growing. My wife is a microbiologist. I asked her, hey, is this bacteria growing on top? And she was like, no, it's probably not. And so I was curious. I took some slides. I looked at it under the microscope. I didn't know what I was doing with the microscope, but I was like, I remember learning how to do this at some point. Let me try looking at it under a microscope. And it didn't appear to be moving. I was like, okay. I don't think it's alive. It's floating. That might be the lanolin that I'm looking for based off of the characteristics that I know about it. Well, how am I going to get it? I didn't know we had a hot plate, and so I used a George Foreman grill to just sort of heat up my mixture. And so I was like, okay, I'll just boil away the water and I'll be left with the oil. Except, if you take a look in that graduated cylinder, because it's a lot easier to see in the graduated cylinder than the beaker, there's some black crud there. That scouring process not only extracts the lanolin from the raw wool, but also all of the poop and the other excrement that is stuck in that wool sheep. The sheep wool, rather. And so when you just boil all the liquid away, you get left with that sort of crud that I had. So there was definitely lanolin in it, but also poop. And maybe I didn't tell people it was poop before I had them all going around touching it. It was like, look, I got the lanolin out. And then this last bit is more so to do with my Montessori training. However, I realized I did actually lie because I did use this for plastic. Because I know. Because I had this lovely setup that then I could take molten plastic that I've talked about this before, and so I'm not going to go into crazy detail, but I had a mold that then I could shove this molten plastic into and then turn it on the lathe into this lovely little blank. And it was so nice not needing to worry about, oh, do I turn this in machining or do I turn this in woodworking? And just being able to make the mess and clean it up and have a really good time. That's all I got. Thank you. Yeah.
How much wool to get that teeny tiny bit of gross lanolin?
Okay. So that's tricky because we had, I think, a full fleece that ended up getting scoured. I did not process all of the gross water. What I will say is that amount came from 100 milliliters of gross scoured water. So, teeny tiny amount. Yeah.
Have you ever shear sheep?
I haven't sheared a sheep. I didn't have the opportunity to do that while I was at the farm. We spent a lot of time milking goats and making cheese.
Does your hands become...
Oh,
Oh.
yes. And so I did take a couple of the sheep on walks, and so I got to pet the sheep while I was doing that. I was like, yes, this feels like the thing I'm trying to get. Yeah.
Okay, just to save you a little bit of time, if you have the thought of trying this, there are a lot of things you can do on the way,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't spin wool on.
Yeah.
Could you explain your first slide a little bit?
My first.
It was about your summer goals. in
Oh!
terms of everything, like all sorts of very interesting questions about sheep.
Okay. So, broadly speaking, and now I've got my teacher hat on. Broadly speaking, the way that Montessori education approaches the adolescent level is you look at a problem in your environment. In this case, our problem was we have sheep that we don't know what to do with. What do we do with the sheep? And so we went out and was like, well, what can we do with the wool? Can we extract the oil? How have other people used? And so it's a more holistic approach to looking at a particular problem in the singular environment that the student is in, but then connecting it to all of these other aspects of education. Yeah?
Could you give the sheep a bath to get the dew off before you do this process?
Theoretically, yes. However, the wool was pre-ready for us. It was in a lovely garbage bag from the last time the sheep had been sheared. You could do some pre-processing, but in doing so, you'd then be removing some of the yolk from the raw wool, and you want to keep as much of that in there as possible because that's where the lanolin's going to be. Yeah?
Is it possible that the black stuff is tar from heating over maybe proteins?
Possible. I'm not sure.
That feels
I didn't dig too much into it, but just I did it a second time, and I'm not entirely sure. I could have spent much more than 2 weeks doing this, I would have been very happy to do this. I'd be happy if I was still at the farm right now, still just playing around with my lanolin. Yeah.
And you thought about when the fixed solution is still, you're getting nice and warm,
Mhm.
but before boiling it all down, while it's still hot enough that the lanolin would be pretty much flowing.
Yeah.
Run through like a very fine micron filter.
So
Separate the junk and the black stuff out.
that could work. I was limited in what I had access to because I had my adolescent, I have no money, I just have the things that are on the farm hat on. The other thought that occurred to me once I realized that, oh, well, I can heat it up and it'll get more liquid. Well, what if I tried the whole pressing it thing again, but I got the wool hot first? And I didn't have the time to do that, but I still think I can squeeze the grease out of it. My next plan might be go to a barber shop, get a bunch of greasy hair, and try and squeeze that out. Why not?
Thank you. Watch out for Walter if he has clippers behind you. James has an old project he'd like to show.
Where's the button? How do I zoom? Oh.
There's a T and a W. There you go.
So for those who don't know, I'm a recent Texas transplant, and this was a big project I did at my last makerspace, kind of before I left. This is a aquaponics system. For those who aren't familiar, it's a lot like hydroponics, but you use the fish poop as the fertilizer for your farm, and your farm is the filter for your fish tank. This system is made out of plywood that was coated with marine grade epoxy to help keep everything from rotting in the water. This was a project I spent about half a year building. Austin Makerspace was about a 2-hour drive away for me, so I couldn't do it daily. The whole system, like I said, it was a woodworking project. It was about a 140-gallon fish tank with a 80-gallon sump and a 12 cubic foot grow bed. Here you can see a little view panel I tried to put into the grow bed so you can see the roots in the gravel. Really didn't work out. You just either get algae right on the window or the roots just stay away from the window because they don't like light. So that was a fun little failure in there. Down here you can see a leak test day that we were doing. We were the facilities manager there was really skeptical of this ever working with plywood. So we had to do a lot of checks. Here's one of the community members' dogs enjoying our makeshift pool while we were checking for leaks. Of this system, like as said, it took about half a year to build. Here's me cleaning the pellets. I used Hydroton expanded clay pebbles as the grow media. It's very popular for being lightweight with good surface area and a structure for the roots to go into. But I had some old used stuff from 3 years prior that I had to transport in my car and then wash before putting into the new system. Let's see. One of the big issues I came up with the system was I had planned to use a sump with baffles to help settle out the particulates. And let me go to the first page. If you see inside here, let's see, I have a small baffle here inside the sump. And that was the worst idea I'd ever had, because what that did was create dead zones of built up fecal waste that would then rot in the system. Never put a baffle in your sump for a fish system. But skipping to the end here, the system ran for about 3 years before it was finally decommissioned, with no major issues other than one flood because of someone that was volunteering to help with the system, not keeping an eye on what was happening. So this was in the front lobby of the Austin Makerspace. It pretty much took over the whole front lobby with just, I believe that was brown cotton that's over in the corner. We would do basil and different types of salad periodically. Basil was the most popular. We had a couple guy come in and make pesto every month with the basil that I was growing from it. Overall, the system was very effective. We had one person try and start adding in additional plants and have it to where from the sump you can have multiple tanks and different containers using the water as it cycles between your tank and the sump. And one of the points for the sump was so the fish tank always saw a constant water level. So the fish tank would have the water cycle constantly between it and the sump, but then the grow bed was a timed ebb and flow. So it would turn on a pump to the grow bed for 15 minutes out of every hour. And you can cycle that between different grow beds without the fish ever getting stressed from a constantly changing level. That's the cap of that. Any questions? Yes. So you have two types of bacteria. One takes ammonia and turns it into nitrites. The other takes the nitrites, turns it into nitrates, or reverse that, nitrates to nitrites. They are naturally occurring, but they take time to build up in a system. So to dry cycle this system before adding the fish, I took pure ammonia, added about a quarter cup to the system every day for 2 weeks, monitoring the nitrate and nitrite levels within the system until you could see ammonia build up, then go down as the nitrates went up, and then the nitrates would go down as the nitrites would come up. And once you had nitrites, you have the proper bacteria built in the system to then add your fish. We did tilapia, about 8 fingerlings to get the system started. Tilapia do not self-regulate their population. They breed like rabbits, and it was a constant problem because we didn't get them all same gendered. One of them was a different gender than the rest, and it became a problem for the next 3 years. Yes? We never did get to. We had a die-off and then an emergency ending of the system. During the Great Freeze in Texas a few years back, system was fine, but then a month later, since I was only able to come by for monthly checks, no one had noticed that one of the main pumps had died. And so the system ran for about a month with no water circulation before all the fish died. So yeah, the freeze had nothing to do with it, but it was just around the same time. But yeah, I did have a lot of fun building this project. I'd like to do it again in the future someday. Overall, it cost me about $2,000 between the epoxy, the wood, scavenged a lot of materials for it, but it was a very fun project. It's currently still in Texas. I loaned it to a nonprofit that does inner city gardening classes for children. Thank you.
Last on the list, we have Brian, who only told me he wanted to be last. I have no idea what he's showing.
It is upside down, isn't it? All right. All right. Very, very nice Brother sewing machine donated to us. We didn't necessarily need it in the fabric arts area because we've got a surplus at the moment. And it had definitely some problems to it. There was at least one piece missing, and the electronics were just atrocious. But it's so cool looking. It's like an old school Cadillac or something. The two-tone's beautiful. The paint on it's great. So I have completely tuned it up and have replaced some parts on it and all of the wiring redone for it, and it runs like a top. So we're hoping that somebody who doesn't have a machine at all and wants to learn to sew will take it off our hands, or maybe they've got some kids that want to learn and we'll take it off our hands. And it is back there in Fabric Arts right now, sitting on one of the tables if you want to eyeball it. It is very cool in color. Yes? Yeah, this is it done. Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Oh, it does. It does.
One announcement. This past week, I think it was Sunday, I don't remember exactly what day, was Knox Makers' 14th anniversary. Been around for quite a long time now. A teenager. Oh no. Bring on the drama. No drama. Couple classes coming up this Thursday is blacksmithing authorization. So if you are interested in getting the key to the blacksmithing building, sign up for this Thursday. I think it's at 6:30, something like that. Sunday afternoon, Sue and Thea, I think together, are teaching a small repairs in hand sewing class. So can you bring a project to that? Please bring a project of something that your favorite garment that has a rip or something like that, and Sue and Thea will help you repair that. Sunday is Intro to Metalworking at 1:12, something, in the afternoon. I think it's at 1. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, look at the calendar. Don't just take my word for it. Next Tuesday is new member onboarding, so if you're interested in membership, or if you are a trial member and you haven't completed this yet, after show and share, we'll be meeting in the classroom, and Isaac and I will do a small presentation about Knox Makers and how to become a good member and become part of the community. And then next Wednesday is Intro to TIG Welding, which comes after the Intro to Metalworking, correct? Yes. And that's what we've got so far. If you are your first time here and you haven't had a tour yet, find someone with a red badge or anybody, and they'll give you a tour. Otherwise, go have fun.